She wasn't getting really any milk at all. So I pumped between 6 to 8 times a day. And when I'm determined or when I'm stressed about something in my life, I spend money. Really, the best thing is that they are fed. I still find this a really emotional topic. So I was able to breastfeed her for 16 months, which is an absolute miracle. So I want to just tell you before I start that I am in no way, shape or form a medical professional. I hated science in high school. It was probably my worst subject. So I'm not coming from a scientific, I am in the medical field, I know what's best angle or perspective. I am just coming from my own personal experience, what worked for me and what happened with me on my breastfeeding journey. And yeah, I'm just sharing with you the struggles with breastfeeding and the struggles with building my milk supply and expressing, pumping around the clock, doing all the things to build my supply up so that I could breastfeed my little girl for longer than 2 weeks. So yeah, I'm just sharing with you my experience, what worked for me. I still find this a really emotional topic. Can't believe I'm crying to a camera. But I still find this an emotional topic, and I think what's made it more emotional sharing it now is because I've finished breastfeeding Eden. And it took me so much effort to breastfeed her. It did not come naturally at all. And I had to work really hard to be able to breastfeed my little girl. And I just want you to know, for those who struggle with breastfeeding and weren't able to breastfeed their baby, I have so much sympathy and love for you. And I know that breastfeeding doesn't come as naturally as it should to some of us for whatever reason. And I'm really sorry. And my motto always was fed is best. Fed is best. Even though I really fought hard to breastfeed because I knew that breast milk would be better for her. Really, the best thing is that they are fed. And yeah. Okay, let me start from the beginning. Hopefully I can get through this without crying too much. But basically, I will share my birth story as well at some stage, but I ended up being induced. So I had an induction and she was born via vacuum delivery. I was utterly exhausted when she was born. Like, I cannot describe the amount of exhaustion that I felt. My whole body, just right at the end of giving birth to her, was just shaking. I remember having a shower, not even being able to move. Like, the midwives had to shower me. They literally had to lift my arm up. They had to help me hold Eden. I was that weak. So I'm not even sure what happened that night that I gave birth to Eden. I remember having the first feed with her. And I remember a couple of other feeds after that. But I feel like maybe I didn't feed her enough to begin with. And then that may have inhibited the fact that my milk supply didn't come as easily. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what happened or what went wrong. But a few days after giving birth to Eden, I was expecting my milk supply to come in. As everyone talks about, you know, your boobs are engorged, you've got all this milk, and it just never happened. And I was at home at that stage, and I remember like telling, you know, people were asking if they could see Eden, and I was just not at all in the state for visitors beyond family. I could hardly walk, and I was struggling to breastfeed. I had nipple trauma. I was like using these nipple shields from nearly day dot, just trying to figure out stuff. And I remember in the hospital seeing a few lactation consultants, and my sister had babies who had tongue or lip ties or both. And so I was asking them, does she have a tongue tie? Because I was like, it just was not working. There was severe pain when she was trying to latch, and my nipples were in trauma. It just wasn't working. And they would look in her mouth, and no one was picking up a tongue tie. And some of them were even saying, oh, you know, even if she has a tongue tie, it shouldn't affect your feeding. Many people go on to feed their babies even when they have a tongue tie. And because so many lactation consultants kind of brushed that aside or said that they didn't think that she had a tongue tie, I didn't really explore that, and I tried to persist with the breastfeeding. So I was feeding, and she would literally be on my boob for hours. And I just thought, oh, well, this girl, like, she's just a slow feeder. But the truth was that she wasn't actually getting anything. She wasn't getting really any milk at all. So the third or fourth day, you kind of expect your milk supply to come in, like gushing in like a flood of milk, and it just didn't happen for me. And the midwives who were visiting were really helpful, helping me to get her to latch and feel comfortable on me. And were encouraging me that it's going to be okay. Like, some people, their milk supply just comes in gradually, and so maybe and you know, like, it seems like you're getting a bit more milk, so just keep doing what you're doing and it's going to be okay. So I kept doing what I was doing. I was feeding her every 2 to 3 hours as instructed, all through the night and day, and she was just an unsettled baby. So I would be feeding her, and she would feed for an hour or so, and she would just fall asleep on me. The midwives would come and they would weigh her. And a week after she was born, that's when they're meant to be back to their birth weight. So when they're born with a little bit more chub, I guess, and then they lose that weight a little bit, and then they gain it back. So within a week, they might lose some weight, but then they'll be back to their birth weight. And I know now that not to be too stickler for that rule when it comes to weight and weighing your baby. The midwife that came to visit me, she weighed Eden and she was losing weight. So I had to go to a specialist, a lactation consultant that was 45 minutes away, and I had to get her to look at the way that I was breastfeeding and what was going wrong and why my baby might have been losing weight. So when she weighed my baby there and looked at her birth weight and then looked at the weight that she was, I can't remember what the difference was, she said to me, you need to top Eden up with formula. And I remember just feeling completely devastated and deflated. I literally had that baby in my arms, Eden in my arms, for 1 week, and they were already telling me to top up with formula. And for whatever reason, now I don't think that that's the end of the world, but at the time it really felt like the end of the world. This was my first baby. You have all the ideals in your mind of what you want to do with your firstborn or with your baby, and I wanted to breastfeed so desperately. And so she said, I want you to top her up with 20 mils of formula every meal. Oh, I was devastated. I just went home and I just wept and wept and wept with the thought, not that I had to top her up with 20 mils of formula, but the thought that this was going to be the end. This was going to be the end. The fact that I'm going to start feeding her a bottle of formula. She's going to like that, and she's just not going to want to breastfeed because she's actually getting something from the bottle. I just thought, yeah, this is going to be the end of my journey, because I knew that nipple stimulation equals milk supply. So the less I was doing that, the more my milk supply was going to go down. And, you know, I was praying to God and asking God to help me and to, you know, telling him, Lord, I just want to breastfeed. Just help me, help my milk supply to come in. And so beautifully, not shortly after, I got a text from a really good friend of mine from high school. And he said, hey, how are you going? Like, how's it all going with the baby? And I just opened up to him. This is a good friend of mine. I just told him, this is what's happening. Like, they want me to top her up with formula and I'm devastated. And he said, call me and Amelia is his wife. And we've had a similar experience to you, and we'll tell you what you need to do to build your milk supply up. So I was like, okay, at that point, willing to try absolutely everything and anything to build my milk supply up. So I got on the phone with them, and they were just so beautifully encouraging. And she shared with me a protocol that helped her build her milk supply. And they sent me this document of things that I needed to do to build my milk supply up. Basically, I want to share that with you because it meant that I could breastfeed Eden, and I've only just stopped. She's 16 months now. I've only just stopped breastfeeding her. So I was able to breastfeed her for 16 months, which is an absolute miracle. So what I was doing is I would feed Eden. Sometimes it would take an hour, top her up, settle her to sleep, and then pump. That was the schedule, and amazingly my milk supply just increased, and the more I pumped, the more I would get, you know, over the span of a few weeks. Like, it didn't just happen overnight. Like, when I was first pumping, nothing was coming. And I remember Taylor, my friend, saying to me, just keep doing it because it will start to signal to your body that your body needs milk. And so I did. I just kept pumping. So it was like 20 mil. And then I was getting like 30 mil. Then I was getting 40 mil. Then I was getting 50 mil. Then I was getting 60, 70, 100 mil. Or every time that I pumped. And I remember being able to fill up one of these pump bottles with one side, and you always have a good side and a bad side. That's basically what I was doing. So then I went as well to a lactation consultant who, they don't call themselves lactation consultants. They're like, there's like a title for them. I can't remember. I'll put it here. But I went and saw her. Her business is called Milky Business, and she's incredible. She was so incredible. And basically the protocol that my friends had given me was very similar to the protocol she ended up giving me as well. But she's told me to get a hospital grade pump to help increase the amount of milk that I was getting when I expressed. She also looked at Eden's mouth and her tongue and said, look, I don't think that her tongue is functioning optimally. So I want you to go and see a tongue tie specialist. And so I did. I went and saw a tongue tie specialist probably 4 weeks after Eden was born. And when I went to the specialist, they looked in her mouth and immediately she said she's got a 90% attachment. So basically her tongue was attached to the bottom of her jaw, and it was posterior, so it was kind of hard to see that it was a tongue tie, but she said there was a 90% attachment. So I ended up getting the tongue tie snipped. That's when everything started to just get better and better and better. So just to rewind, when I went to the tongue tie specialist, like, I was using nipple shields, and she wouldn't attach to my boob without the nipple shield. So I was using these because there was so much trauma, and I wanted to breastfeed, but I didn't want to cause any more trauma to my nipples. So I was using these nipple shields, but she just would not attach without the nipple shields. And I thought, I'm going to be using these silly nipple shields for the rest of my breastfeeding journey. And I remember feeling really distressed about that. But I remember that lactation consultant said to me, look, just take one thing at a time. Let's just build your milk supply up. Let's deal with the tongue tie. And then once all of that's dealt with, then you can start taking the nipple shield away. So I want to just give some advice for those who may be experiencing what I experienced, just to help you, because I was just so grateful for the friends that I had around me who were able to share with me their journey and their struggles with breastfeeding and what worked for them. And I know that that doesn't work for everybody. Not everyone can build their milk supply up, but it's definitely worth a try. I've written some notes here just so I get it right. So if you are struggling with breastfeeding and your baby is losing weight, and you have been given the suggestion to top up with formula, I just want to say, do it. It's okay. Fed is best. The way that they create formula these days is pretty incredible. It's going to be okay. Do the formula. There are so many formula fed babies out there, and they're thriving, they're doing amazing, and quite frankly, no one knows who was breastfed or who was formula fed. It really is okay. But if you're keen to breastfeed, just because you top up with formula to begin with doesn't mean that your breastfeeding journey is over. So if someone is suggesting to top up with formula, don't fret, go and do that, and then start to build your milk supply up. So basically, your baby should be getting, and don't quote me, and definitely check with your lactation consultant, but they should be getting around 150 ml per kilogram. So for Eden, she was 3.97 kilograms, so she was a big baby. And that's 595 mils a day that she needed. So if I was going to feed her 8 times a day, if I divide that by 8, she needed to be getting around 74 mils per meal. Obviously, I didn't know how much breast milk she was getting, so I started topping her up with 20 mils, which was what the lactation consultant said. Then she said to increase to 50. And then when I saw the specialist, she was saying around 70 mil. So I was just topping her up with 70 mil and just giving her what she needed. Praise the Lord, I was able to give her a lot of breast milk top up and then some formula top up as well. A few more tips. I would suggest getting a hospital grade breast pump. So I use Spectra, and I use the blue one because I could charge it, and then this could be portable. I didn't have to put it into a power point, so I could take it in the car with me. I could take it traveling or to other people's places or to church or whatever, or wherever I needed it. I could have it and it could be charged full of battery, and I didn't have to plug it in. You can also hire them apparently, so some pharmacies will hire them out, or some hospitals, or if you have a lactation consultant in the area, it's often the private ones will have these to hire out. Now the second thing was to have a slow release bottle. I use the pigeon bottle because it's got a tall and narrow, what do you call this bit? Oh, the teat. So you want a long narrow teat, and you want it to be a super slow, so like literally like the littlest pin hole, and you want to be feeding them slowly, because if you're bottle feeding with the purpose of going back to breastfeeding at some stage, you don't want them to love the bottle more than you. So if you can have the bottle just horizontal like this, and so if you put the baby up and sit the baby up in your arm and have the bottle as horizontal as possible, that makes them work for the milk just a little bit more, and it develops that strong suck that they need to be able to breastfeed. My friend also gave me the advice to get a sports bra and to cut holes in a sports bra so that it would hold up the breast pump. You could basically be hands-free doing it. I ended up I did that, and then I was like, I'm just gonna get the Fandangle stuff. I just went all out there, and so I got a bra that zipped up in the middle. Oops, wrong way. I got one of these bras, zipped up in the middle. This was amazing. Like, if you are pumping around the clock, definitely recommend these. So basically it has a little hole there so you can have your hands free while you're pumping. I would get your hospital grade breast pump, your slow release milk bottles, and do the horizontal feeding. Get yourself a pumping bra. And then when it came to nutrition, you really want to be mindful of what you're eating to make sure that what you're eating supports breast milk production in your body. So brewer's yeast, you've probably heard of this before, is amazing for building your milk supply up. So lactation cookies that you can buy, I love lactation cookies. They will have brewer's yeast in them, as well as oats and chia seeds and flax seeds and things like that that can help boost your milk supply. So brewer's yeast is amazing. I also had this supplement here, which was breastfeeding. It's called Breastfeeding Support. I don't know if you can see that, which has got fenugreek and thistle, blessed thistle. So fenugreek is also another herb that's amazing for boosting milk supply. Now, there is something that you can get from your doctor, a prescription for, what's it called? It's like, I can't remember what it's called, but basically it's a medication that will help build your milk supply up. I wasn't so keen to go on that medication. I was ready to do it if I needed to. If the natural way just wasn't working, I was willing to take the medication. So I pumped between 6 to 8 times a day. During the night feeds, I wasn't as keen to pump. I was just so tired. You'd feed, give her a bottle, put her down, and to stay up for another 20 minutes to pump just seemed too crazy and exhausting. So during the nights, I didn't do as much pumping, but occasionally if I had the energy, I would, because apparently like your milk supply is really good around 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. So if you can do something then, and always in the morning, if I'd pump first thing in the morning, I would get the most milk that I would for the entire day. And then as the day progressed, I would get less and less and less. I would pump for 20 minutes, 10 minutes on either side, or you can just do 2 at the same time, obviously. I would put them on both breasts and I would do about 20 minutes and see how much milk I could get. Obviously, don't pump for longer than 20 minutes, and especially if your milk supply, if nothing's coming out, you can stop. But I always went just a little bit beyond what was coming out, like just for a little bit longer, just to stimulate, to tell my body I need a little bit more, I need a little bit more. Because basically stimulation is what sends a signal to your brain or to your body that it needs to produce more milk. This is all stuff I learned, and like honestly, go and see an amazing lactation consultant because it will make a world of difference. You don't have to give up on your breastfeeding journey. There are things that you can try. If you try them and these things don't work, I don't want you to beat yourself up. Like it's gonna be okay. Your baby's gonna be amazing. But if you do want to give these things a try, they may work for you as well, like they worked for me. Every day I would do what they call power pumping. So that's like 20 minutes of pumping, 10 minutes off, then another 10 minutes on, 10 minutes off, 10 minutes on. It's basically half an hour to 40 minutes of just a really big pumping session just to really start stimulating your milk supply. If you do that daily, that can really help. It definitely helped me. So I would try and do that once a day. Sometimes I do it more, sometimes I wouldn't do it at all. It just depended on how busy my day was. But 20 minutes on, 10 minutes rest, another 10 minutes on, 10 minutes rest, and then you can do another 10 minutes if you want to. So for 40 minutes all up. That definitely really helped. So yeah, 15 to 20 minute pumping sessions was kind of what I was aiming for. So a couple of other must-have items. So the hydrogel Breastis are amazing. I use these a lot. So they're like a little gel thing. They come in this plastic. You rip them apart, and they're just like this cool gel that you can put on your nipples, which is really, really soothing. So I would do that quite a bit because I did have nipple trauma. I strongly encourage you to get some breast milk bags. So I got these ones, which I loved because they were super cute. They had the little bottle on there. So these are from the Milk Bar. So I don't know if you can see that. But you can just get Ziploc bags, or you can get a lot cheaper ones from Kmart or Target. But I just went all out there because I was like that determined. And when I'm determined, or when I'm stressed about something in my life, I spend money. Like, I just go out there and I spend money on all the things that I need. I just don't even look at the bank account, you know, balance. I don't even tell Blair. I just go and I do it. I spend money. So that's just what I do when I'm stressed. So I got these, and I remember when they arrived, my sister was with me, and I said to her, I'm never going to use these. I'm never gonna have enough milk supply to be able to use these things. She's like, you will, it's gonna be okay. Like, you will use these bags. And praise the Lord, I did. I used these bags because basically the reason I said that was, yeah, I was pumping and I was getting milk, but Eden was drinking all the milk that I was pumping. So I was like, because she had the tongue tie issue, she wasn't able to draw milk out of my breast. So she was relying on the milk that I had pumped. And yeah, so I was like, I'm never going to use these. But once she had the tongue tie release and she was starting to latch better, I was, not having to top her up with as much milk. And so I was storing milk in here for future use, which was incredible. There are a lot of pros to bottle feeding your baby. Like Blair, he'd have a night where he was like on, I would sleep through the night and he would bottle feed Eden every time that she woke up. It was incredible because look, if you've been there before and you've had a baby, or you're in the midst of this right now and you're breastfeeding through the night, it is exhausting. Getting up every few hours or every couple of hours and feeding. So to have a night where you can get a full night's sleep, just amazing. For those of you who are using nipple shields and you do want to get off them, how did I do it? I think that I tried so many things. Like I would try like attaching her to it and then like slipping it away like throughout the feed, but she wasn't silly. Like she knew that it was gone. But every time I fed her, I would try and attach her without the nipple shield to begin with, just to see whether she would latch. And I think as well that because at the beginning that was so painful for me without the nipple shield, it was more me just being so scared and paranoid to take off the nipple shield than anything. So once I was brave enough to take off the nipple shield and just give her a go at latching, she began to figure it out. It did take quite some time, maybe a week of just trying every now and then just to get her to attach without the nipple shield. I just gave her a turn, just every feed, and if it didn't work and she got distressed, I'd put the nipple shield back on. Sometimes she'd latch and it's just like, yes, this is amazing, and it would only last for a little bit and then she'd start getting really fussy and I put the shield on again. It just felt like I was never going to get there, but I finally did, and I was able to take away the nipple shield completely and she was feeding. That's basically my breastfeeding journey, and I wanted to share it because I just feel like for me, when I was going through these struggles, it was those that had been through it before who really encouraged me and really made me feel heard and seen and not a worthless mother. I feel like so much of our worth as mums can be tied up in how we labor or how we give birth, and then whether we can breastfeed or not. And I just think that that's so it can be so discouraging if you don't have the perfect natural birth, or you don't have the perfect breastfeeding journey without any hiccups. And the reality is, so many of us go through traumatic birth experiences or hard births, or so many of us have hiccups with breastfeeding, and I just feel like it needs to be spoken about a little bit more. So I hope that you feel encouraged. If you're going through this right now, please feel free to reach out. I would love to hear from you. Type in the comments if you have gone through this before and what works for you, what you did to really help build your milk supply. Just before I go, I think my message here is, number one, if your milk supply has come in slowly or is quite low, there are ways that you can build it up and be at a point where you're exclusively breastfeeding your baby. And it's okay if you decide that you don't want to go to all of that hassle and drama, because trust me, it is hassle, it's drama, it's emotional, it's a roller coaster having to pump, it's exhausting. I totally understand. There is no judgment here if you go to formula. And remember, fed is best. If you still are determined to breastfeed, then find a lactation consultant and follow a protocol. Stick with it, be consistent, because you can get there and you can do it. It's going to be okay, regardless of whether your milk supply builds up completely or not. Your baby is going to be okay. And the third thing that I want to leave you with is, if you are experiencing difficulty breastfeeding, especially with latching and nipple trauma, make sure you see a tongue tie specialist. Don't take the first, second, third, fourth or fifth lactation consultant's advice when they say, no, she doesn't have a tongue tie. No, she doesn't have a tongue tie, because that's what happened to me. See a specialist. Just make sure that you can tick or cross that one out, because if she does, or if he does have a tongue tie, getting that release can just make the world of difference to your breastfeeding journey. So, and I know that there's a lot of controversy around getting a tongue tie release. It is not cruel. Like, look, Eden did cry, but she was fine. She was fine, and it meant the difference basically of me continuing my breastfeeding journey or not. So I was just so grateful that I did do the tongue tie. It just made the world of difference, the tongue tie release. So yeah, definitely look into that. Okay, well, if you liked this content, make sure you like this video, leave me a comment below, and subscribe if you want to see future videos from me. And yeah, thank you for watching, and all the best with your breastfeeding journey.